Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Toofty, you're you, and this is Skill Flaws. I wanted to make that into a bit of a catchphrase, but I feel like it's a bit forced, so I might have to just cancel that one. Anyway, another topic on skill because you guys just can't get enough. Now, we have touched upon this topic in the past a little bit, but I wanted to focus this episode on skill flaws. Now, Toofty, why is this interesting? Why do we care about skill flaws? I guess they could be kind of interesting for new players who want to find a class that is simple to pick up and delve into the game with. Also, say you're having a really bad game and you're like, not feeling it today, I'm tired. What hero can I pick where, I'm not playing my best, but I'm still going to contribute to the game? And in that case, picking those classes with a more suitable skill flaw might make sense. The first thing I want to do is clear up some confusion. Before you carry on watching, what do you think a low skill flaw means? Does it mean A, a hero is easy to pick up and learn, or B, a hero is difficult to pick up and learn? Now, I always thought, easy, right? The lower the skill flaw, the easier it is for someone to pick up and play a new hero or class and to be effective with them. But then I stumbled across this video from a channel called Skyline.
Here is the thing that everyone gets wrong. The easier a hero is to pick up and play, the higher the skill floor. A floor limits how far down you can go. So a high skill floor limits how badly you can play a hero relative to your skill.
And when I heard this, I was like, that's a bit annoying. I totally didn't know that. I've been an idiot all my life. Feels bad, man. But shortly after, I stumbled across this Reddit article, which actually discusses in some detail exactly what we're going to talk about today. And the guy who wrote this, he explains what's going on here and the confusion. And he also writes that what I had originally thought, that low skill ceilings equals easy to pick up and play, is still potentially right. It's a really interesting little read actually. I find all this very fascinating, and a lot of the content in this video has been inspired by this little Reddit article. So if you're still confused, as always, I've got some juicy little graphs, some little animations here to make everything beautiful and clear. I thought we'd start off with a medic or a mercy, someone who is traditionally or stereotypically very easy to pick up and play. So let's take a look at how that might look. First of all, in the original way I was thinking about things. So this graph shows the skill floor and the skill ceiling. Obviously, the higher this graph goes at the top there, the more you can learn, the more you can continue to get better and better with a hero or class. But for this video, let's try and ignore that top half of this graph and focus on the bottom half. Okay, so this one has a very low skill floor. And the best way to explain this for me is that this blue bar is kind of the skill juice, if you like, okay? It's the player's skill. So the bar can get very high because your skill can get very high, and the bar can get very low because your skill can get very low. So at the very bottom of this bar, you could be, a 5-year-old, you picked up the game, your skill is very low, and yet you're still able to be somewhat efficient or do at least something with your chosen hero or class. Now let's look over to the second one, where if the graph were to represent efficiency, in this case, that's where it would look a little bit different. Again, your efficiency can get very high as you get very good, but on the other end of it, again, taking, a Lucio for example, your efficiency cannot literally get that low because even if you're not skillful, you're still going to be having some impact on the game. And in the case of Lucio, you're still going to be healing your team around you. And that's why that efficiency can't get that low because you're always doing something, however bad you are at the game. And so that's where the confusion lies, and that's what the Reddit article talks about. So personally, the way I like to think about this is the first graph. It's about skill, you talk about skill ceilings, you talk about skill floors, you don't really talk about skill ceilings and then switch it over to efficiency floors. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below, as always. So we're going to end this video by taking a look at TF2 and Overwatch, two of the games I play the most often, and rank all the classes and heroes, focusing on their skill floors. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here is that the skill ceilings do not necessarily match the skill floors by any means, which I think is really interesting. Before we do that, one last Reddit article I found whilst doing the research for this video. Again, it's a very old one, but I thought it was really interesting. It's someone who has done exactly this with the TF2 classes. The way the guy has done this, and his name is 0xv29 or something, hopefully he doesn't mind me taking a look at this. He seems to have used the second technique, looking at efficiency-ness. So if we look at the medic and have a look at the bottom of that bar, as you can see it starts very high. What he means by this is, you pick up medic, you don't have to be very skillful, and yet you can still be very effective. So it's kind of the opposite way in which I'm going to look at this in just a second. So we've got medic, heavy, soldier, Pyro, Engineer, Demo, Scout, Sniper, and then Spy. I think a lot of these I actually agree with, especially at each end of the spectrum. Okay guys, I hope you like juicy animations because you're in for a treat. Here we go. Skill floors, TF2 classes. Let's take a look at this bad boy. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. Can you guess who's who? Probably not. Let's start with the very first and last guy. As I said, you could probably guess who my first guy is, Medic. And my very last guy, Spy. I totally agree with the previous Reddit post. As you can see, the way I've illustrated this is that the skill of the medic can be very low, and that's why the bar goes so far down for the medic. And one of the things that makes this really confusing is the fact that of course you could be a spy and have very low skill. You could be, let's say, a 5-year-old, going back to our last example. But at that skill level, you just wouldn't be effective. And as your skill gradually gets higher, you get to a certain skill level and then suddenly you are being effective. But that's just a much higher skill level than it is for medic. Hopefully my beautiful animations make that a little bit clearer, because trying to articulate that is a tad tricky. Okay, so let's fill in all the classes in the middle and let's see if you agree with me. Again, throw your comments below. And also, we're not going to focus too much on the top half of this graph. We've done that before. I think I keep changing my mind on this. You know, skill ceilings depend on what game mode you're looking at. Are you looking at competitive, in pubs? It's just an endless question. But for today, let's look at the skill floors and see if you agree with me. So, Medic, as we said, as long as you can click on someone, you can do a little bit of healing and you're good to go. Engineer, as long as you can put a sentry gun down, you know, you're literally helping your team. Heavy, Pyro, Soldier, again, can all be quite forgiving classes, and that's the key here. Even if you're a bit rubbish, you've just picked up the game, you can still kind of help your team. And then we start to see the classes such as Demo Man, in my opinion, Scout, Sniper, and finally Spy, where you need to reach a certain skill level before you're being effective at those classes. And as I said before, the one biggest message I want to get across here, which I find very interesting, is that the skill ceilings by no means match the skill floors. I think some of the best examples here are, say, the medic or the pyro, maybe the soldier. You know, soldier typically is fairly simple to get your head round and just, you know, do a bit of damage with, but the skill ceiling is redonkulously high. If you've watched any sixes, you'll understand what I mean. And just one last time, these skill ceilings I didn't spend too long on. I made a bunch of them the same, in fact, because I know that can trigger your face off, and I didn't want to derail the conversation too much. But if you think I've got any of these classes in drastically the wrong place, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And with this kind of video, I don't want to focus just on TF2. I want to try and make it a bit more accessible for the wider audience. So we're going to end this by taking a look at some Overwatch heroes. So another way you can kind of illustrate this stuff is in another type of graph, which I have no idea what it's called. I want to say a quadrant graph or like a plotting graph. I don't know. Help me out, guys. Help me out here. Anyway, you've got these 4 quadrants, and using this you can just sort of plot in each of your heroes and see whereabouts they sit. So we alluded to this earlier, but Lucio sits very far left because he has a very low skill floor, but although I don't play him very much, my understanding is that he's got a mega high skill ceiling. So he would sit over here, and you'll see in a sec that some of these areas are more rare than others, if you see what I mean. So next up are those which have a very high skill ceiling and a pretty high skill floor as well. Those are your classic, you know, super high skill ceiling characters such as Tracer, Genji, Widowmaker, in no particular order there, but some of these may have a lower skill floor, I don't know, but they probably sit somewhere in this top right quadrant. Some of the other heroes that I would say sit with Lucio, but perhaps not quite as high in terms of the skill ceiling, quite easy to pick up and play with and be reasonably effective with, you know, the classic being Mercy, Winston, you know, has the auto lock on, Junkrat, can spam like mad, and can do a lot of work. Next up, and these last 2 quadrants I found very difficult to find examples for, mainly because every hero, you know, has a pretty decent skill ceiling, to be fair. In the bottom left you may have Bastion, who has both a lower skill ceiling and a lower skill floor. He's quite easy to pick up and play, but still it's a much lower skill ceiling than, say, Genji or Tracer or Widowmaker. And finally, the hardest quadrant I found to fill, and that's those with a high skill floor, so actually they're not that simple to pick up and play, takes a bit of thought, but have a low skill ceiling. It sounds almost like a hero that's not been designed that well. Again, I've kind of exaggerated this graph a little bit, but in the bottom right, you might see someone like Moira. I think when you first pick up Moira, you're like, oh my god, there's orbs all over the gaff. I've got a kill to be able to heal. It's a little bit confusing, but before long, you can get to grips with it very quickly. And my opinion is you're probably going to hit that skill ceiling quite quickly as well. Up for debate. Don't want to be too triggery today. It might be too late for that. And the same kind of goes maybe for Orisa. So yeah, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you disagree with anything I've said today, I've thrown a bunch of information at you and also a bunch of opinions, and I always love hearing your feedback. As long as we all can agree that Demoman takes skill and has the highest skill ceiling in the world, then we're going to get on just fine, okay? As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.